Good afternoon, everyone. Today, Authors at Google is honored to welcome Melissa Clark, the author of the new cookbook, Cook This Now. Melissa's book focuses on the principles behind cooking seasonally, with over 120 recipes that are designed to follow local farmer market offerings. With the holidays just around the corner, Melissa's book, complete with holiday menu suggestions, is sure to inspire cooks everywhere. There's Q&A. And the mic is right over there, so please welcome me in joining Melissa.
Hello. Whose glasses are these, and do they need them? Is it okay that they're there? Okay. God, I might need them. Anyway, hi, welcome. Thank you for coming to my talk. I'm going to do a little reading from my cookbook, which is called Cook This Now. And the cookbook is divided up into 12 chapters. Each chapter corresponds to a month of the year. And what I've done in the book was highlight recipes that you'd want to make that month, because that's the stuff that's in season. It's the stuff that tastes the best. It's the stuff that is its freshest. And it's also the stuff that's the most economical, because stuff that is in season is in abundance. And when you've got a lot of something, it's usually cheaper. So there are so many reasons to cook seasonally, as I'm sure you guys already know. And I thought I would read two little section intros, one to spring, when spring is the time of year at the farmer's market when there's so much promise and you think, oh my God, winter is over. I want to dive into the asparagus, but it's so painful because it's pretty much looks like winter until the last little bit of it. And so I'll talk about that anticipation. And then I'm going to talk about autumn, which is now, which is the harvest time of the year. It's a season of abundance. It's a holiday season. And it's just what I'm thinking about. I'm sure what you guys are all thinking about, like, what am I going to make for Thanksgiving? What am I going to make for the holidays? And so then after I do a little reading, I thought we could talk about those things. I'll tell you my holiday secrets if you tell me yours. So be prepared. If I want to have you guys ask questions, but start thinking now. I also want to hear about special dishes that you guys make for the holidays, so I can steal them. So that's going to be good, right? No, I'm kidding. Sort of. let's just say, I will get inspired by them because I love to hear what people are making in their houses. I feel like if we can share that information, it makes all of us better cooks. And that's so much of what I love to do in my food writing is, hopefully inspire you and also get inspired by what people are really cooking. So I'm going to start out with spring. Okay. My husband swears that April is a winter month. And for most of our relationship, I vehemently disagreed. April is the month we met, I tell him. Remember, the trees were blossoming and the breeze was warm. We took that long walk in the park, talking and laughing. Of course, it was spring in my heart when we met, Daniel says gallantly. But you shivered through the park. You walked faster and faster to warm up. Spring doesn't even start till May. April is cold and nasty. No, April is delightful and sunny. It's full of sweet days. Sure, except when it's snowing. It always snows in April. He and I have debated this point many times over the years, and I've never been convinced. But this year, I had to concede. It wasn't Daniel who convinced me. It was the farmer's market. Because although the damp spring earth was finally pushing out tiny green threads, at the farmer's market, there wasn't anything new to eat. April looked exactly like March, which mirrored February and January. True, the spinach was crisp and lively and didn't freeze together in an icy pile. The wintered-over leeks were finally dug out of the ground, tasting sweet and juicy. Errant bunches of herbs started to appear, sorrel, chives, lovage. But the real stuff we associate with spring, the asparagus, the lettuces, the tiny red strawberries and the rhubarb, those we don't see till May. Which is a long way of saying, when you're cooking seasonally, spring is about 6 weeks long. Well, at least in New York, you guys, not here. Spring is about 6 weeks long, from early May to the end of June, when all of a sudden, the mercury shoots up, the roses bloom, the asparagus wilts, and all of a sudden, it's summer. This fleeting moment of spring is frantic and fantastic. There's an urgency to eat as much in season as possible in a way that doesn't apply to any other time of year, not even with August tomatoes. First out of the gate, asparagus. From the moment the skinny branches start appearing in the market until our pores are saturated with their scent 5 weeks later, we eat asparagus as often as we can, at least 4 times a week and sometimes more. Ditto ramps, those odoriferous alliums that look like floppy overgrown scallions and taste like shallots dusted with lily. Ramps, which grow wild in marshy woodlands, are among the first greens that get pulled from the ground and rushed to the market. I can eat a whole mess of them just sautéed in butter, but they're even better as the base of a mussel stew or tossed into a pan with asparagus and topped with fried eggs. Other happy arrivals in the allium department include pale spring onions, the juice-plump nascent incarnation of the mature paper-swathed onions we take for granted all year long. There's nothing better sliced up into salads or caramelized with vinegar. Then there are tiny white stalks of green garlic that pop out in June. I've waited all winter for these, grumpily putting up with sprouted, dried, bruised garlic from the supermarket until the new crop comes in. And when it does, I celebrate by using the mild-tasting aromatic in absolutely everything I can get away with, and rejoicing in the taut, fresh bulbs. I'm a little more judicious with spring rhubarb because it really does take a bucket of sugar to make it palatable, at least to me. If I'm going to decrease the sweetness when cooking with rhubarb, it's because I'm using it as a vegetable, which in fact it is. I like to think of savory rhubarb as being like lemon, but instead of clear, thin juice, rhubarb has body. It makes a bracing, what is that flavor? Sauce melted down almost all by itself from meat, fish, and as I once tried on a whim, asparagus. Another fleeting harbinger of spring is fiddlehead ferns, which I keep trying to develop a taste for. I first saw them when I was 17 and working at Dean & DeLuca, back when there was just one Soho store and it only sold gourmet items. The produce manager had brought in a sack full of the forest forage things. They were delicate, whirly, dark green discs covered in papery, thin brown paper, and I thought they were beautiful. I was told to rub off the skin with a dish towel as if I was peeling roasted hazelnuts, then blanch them in salted water, blot dry, and cover with vinaigrette. I made them as soon as I got home. Maybe my expectations were too high, but I thought they tasted like tree leaves. Still, every April, when the snow melts and the air softens, my excitement rises as soon as I see fiddleheads piled in a basket. I know once they show up, asparagus and strawberries can't be far behind. That winter is finally over. And I always buy a small bag of the heralding ferns just to see if I finally matured enough into appreciating them. But so far, no go. But hope springs eternal. So, the expectancy of spring. And now I'm going to read about the excitement of the season right now, autumn, the holidays. So let's try it like this. Okay. There's a mournful quality to the onset of autumn. It's a mild ache that creeps up with the appearance of the first fallen leaves, a melancholy mingled with the immediate joy of crisp, cool days, a dimness muting the vivid riot of scarlet-hued trees. I suppose that part of my sadness is never having gotten over that back-to-school feeling of my childhood, when the freedom of summers melted away for what seemed like forever. Then there's a change in light. There's less of it, and of course, as the nights grow longer, and the quality changes too, going from the bright white light of a blinding summer sun to the more subdued sepia hue, the color of faded photographs and pangs of nostalgia. What pulls me out of this glum hole is the humming expectancy of the holiday season, which pretty much begins right after Labor Day and continues through the darkest months. This celebratory run commences with the invitation to that first, we're staying in the city for the weekend cocktail party, and then continues gleefully through Rosh Hashanah, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas, culminating on New Year's Eve, the mother of all holiday feasts, at which I always insist on serving caviar and champagne to excess, even when it's just Daniel and me and a sleepy child, cuddled in the house, watching obscure foreign films while the neighborhood bubbles and froths with excitement just outside the window. Be it New Year's Eve or an intimate dinner gathering, parties bring light, music, friends, and food together into the chilly black nights. And for me, food is at the heart of every get-together, no matter how casual. Even something as simple as inviting another couple with kids over for a mid-afternoon libation means I get to indulge in my favorite thing, menu planning. Fantasizing, what should I make? What should I serve? Olives, clementines, the last of the season's fennel, sausage, sweet and spicy candied nuts. It'll feed both children and their parents while the adults sip red wine with freshly pressed apple cider for the small teetotalers in tow. Fancier parties demand more elaborate fare, and I'm happy to chop, toss, roast and bake my way through windy afternoons. I've always thought of autumn as being the season for elaborate cooking projects that happily eat up the entire weekend. Homemade puff pastry, for example, or canning. It's honest, real cooking, which no longer seems like sweaty work after the salads of summer. These are cozy endeavors that keep you close to the stove in the warmest room of the house. This said, I have to admit that since I had my daughter, Dahlia, I'm less inclined toward multi-day cooking projects, though I do like staying near the kitchen at all times. The recipes I gravitate to are simple and hearty, homey and rustic, perhaps a moist gingerbread studded with meltingly tart cranberries, or a farro pasta with spicy salami and tomatoes. Dahlia's too young for school, but she was when I wrote this. Even so, I love the lunchbox appeal of whole wheat, peanut butter sandies that make perfect afternoon snacking for her as well as myself. And I love the way that braises, stews, and large pots of soup simmer and perfume the house, warming the bones after cold, rainy days. Of course, the urge to cook isn't just about keeping warm, it's about taking advantage of the latest farmers market offerings. Autumn, the traditional harvest time of year, means abundance. It means staunch keeping crops that used to fill root cellars back when people had them. It means feeding a family all winter long. Without a place to store potatoes and turnips, I rely on my farmers to do that for me, and I try not to buy those vegetables until as late in the season as possible. In October, I'm still clinging to summer, still nibbling tomato sandwiches for lunch, ignoring sweet potatoes and pumpkins for weeks after their arrival. It's as if my refusal to embrace the cold weather crops will forestall the inevitable deep freeze, will soften winter's eventual grasp. But by the time the weather grows truly cold and I trade my short leather jacket for a long and woolly overcoat, I've eased into the spirit enough to start embracing these dense flesh vegetables, waxy rutabagas, thick-skinned winter squash, verdant Brussels sprouts, all of which can benefit from plenty of soul-warming oven time to make them sweetly irresistible. Roasting is my go-to method for these, and it never fails me, as long as I add enough oil and salt to turn these vegetables golden and caramelized. In fact, when I think of autumn foods, a scarred pan full of brown-edged roasted vegetables strewn with herbs is actually the image that leaps to mind. It's the colors, the ruddy shades of pumpkin, carrots, and yams that recall the leaves outside the window. Autumn is orange and gold and red, intense in flavor, opulent in color, festive in spirit. And even if it starts out rather shakily, at least as far as my mood is concerned, it always ends up bright, twinkling, and exceedingly well-fed. So that is my take on the seasons. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about why I chose to write a seasonal cookbook. We hear so much these days about eating seasonally, eating locally, and I think we've all really absorbed that, whether we follow it or not. It's just, we feel like that's how we're supposed to cook. And I know I always felt that pressure. But what really made me start actually doing it was a weekly trip to the farmer's market. It became part of my ritual. And I think it started when I had my child, because it's like, okay, Saturday morning, I remember when I was a kid, Saturday morning was all about watching cartoons. And let's just say that doesn't go over in our house right now. My husband is very anti-cartoons. So we needed another ritual. And I love the farmer's market so much. I said, let's make Dahlia part of it. Let's make our child part of it. And so since she was born, we just popped her in the stroller. There's a little park right next to the farmer's market. And it's been part of what we do every single Saturday. And once I got in touch with what was really local and really seasonal, not to say I don't buy other stuff, because I do. We cook all kinds of things all year long. But the core of what I'm making, my inspiration on a weekly basis, is really stuff that I'm carting home in the bottom of the stroller. The milk that I buy, the meats that I can get there that are humanely raised. That's what's making up the bulk of what I'm eating. And so as I was doing this, this was about Dahlia's 3. So this was 3 years ago. I started really sort of immersing myself in it. My husband said to me, remember you made that really delicious Brussels sprout thing with the apple cider and the dried cranberries? I'm like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. Remember when you made the really great meatballs with the pork and the chili? No, I couldn't remember what I was cooking. I was just cooking food because, I'm a cook. I love it. But I couldn't remember. I couldn't make anything twice. It was impossible. Unless I was actually writing a recipe, I couldn't remember. So he got me a notebook. He said, here, just put this by the stove. Please jot down the good ones. If there's something good, write it down. And that way, if I want it again, you can remember how to make it. And I started this little kitchen diary. And that is the basis of this book. Every time I made something on a weeknight, on a weekend, whatever it was, Usually it was simple, but if it was really good, if it was, a good one, he'd say, okay, that's the one, write it down right now before you forget. And before I'd even sit down, I would sit there and I would just write down what I did. And as I was flipping through it, I realized, okay, you know what? This is actually a really handy book for people because it's seasonal, so it shows you what to make when. It's easy because that's how I'm cooking. It's got to be easy, but it's full of flavors that I experiment with that maybe people haven't seen before. And because it's an actual diary of what I really made, it's not like other seasonal cookbooks that have seasonal recipes just because. Like, for example, there are no fava beans in this cookbook because fava beans are a real pain. Have you ever sat there and peeled right? I'm not doing that. I go out to eat and I order fava beans and then chefs with sous chefs give them to me and it's delicious, but I don't cook them. Jerusalem artichokes, not my thing. So you're not going to find anything in this book that's not a real representation of what I love, and it makes it very personal. And so, I don't even think, I was going to talk about why seasonal, like what it is about seasonal food that is so much better, but I think we all know that, right? I mean, do you feel like you're cooking seasonally more than you have been? Do you feel like, because I kind of feel like it's part of our cultural message. Do you all kind of think about that or for the most part? Because I'm sure you all have access to a farmer's market. I mean, right? Yeah, better than my farmer's market, I'm sure, right? Total amazing variety. And so I think that rather the question isn't really why, but it's just, oh my God, how can I take the best advantage of the farmer's market? And a lot of people who go to the markets, I feel like, and I know I did this in the beginning, not that I was intimidated, because I'm not intimidated by food, but there'd be stuff there and I just wasn't sure what it was, or I wasn't sure how to use it. And I started coming up with a little rule. Every trip to the farmer's market, buy something I've never bought before. Every trip. So, I mean, it could be an herb that I'd never seen before. It could be a type of variety of apple that I'd never seen before. And by doing that, and that's the advice I love to give people, is go to the farmer's market, buy something you've never bought, but stay in your comfort zone. So if you know you're going to go there and you're going to buy squash, winter squash, maybe you've never bought the kabocha squash. Who here has never bought a kabocha squash? Because I was like exactly 2 years ago. I'd never bought a kabocha squash. So I was like, I always bought the acorn squash or the butternut squash. Why? Because that's just what I bought. So this time I bought the kabocha squash. Stay within your comfort zone, but try something a little bit new. And you know what? Kabocha squash, you guys who have not bought it, it's so delicious, right? I see you nodding because it's amazing. It has a slightly more granular flesh than acorn or butternut, which is very velvety. And it's a little bit drier, but it's intensely flavored. It's earthy. It's so good. So things like that, that's always the advice I give people. Just buy something slightly out of your comfort zone. Or apples. I don't know, do you guys have a lot of varieties of apples out here? You must, or not so much. Because there are 30 kinds of apples and I'll just keep buying the new ones that I don't buy and really get to know them. Like, okay, hello Pippins, you're really crunchy. You're much more crunchy than the Macintosh or whatever. And by doing that, you are learning, and also you're helping farmers by buying things you haven't seen before. All of those things they're heirloom varieties, probably. I mean, kabocha's not, but the different types of apples, the different types of kales, they're things that we need to actually actively support, because if we don't buy them, farmers don't grow them. And so I feel like it's also a political, aside from it's a delicious act to buy these things, it's a political act that's very important, I think, for all of us. And what else did I want to say before I wanted to ask you guys? And the last thing is I wanted to address something which I think is probably near and dear to all of your hearts, and it's near and dear to mine. The fact that we don't have a lot of time to cook. Do you guys have a lot of time to cook? Probably not, right? And I probably have more time because that's what I do for a living. So, but cook. And I also, since I've had a kid, I've been home. It's just been a little bit easier to be in the kitchen. But I hear that excuse from so many people. I really want to cook. I don't have time. And I have one thing to say to people who don't have time to cook. Yes, you do. Don't start with elaborate things. Start simple. Start with something like a roasted vegetable, a steamed vegetable. I like to do things that don't take a lot of washing. So I will say to all of you, even if you don't have time to cook, take one vegetable that you know you love. Broccoli, who loves broccoli? cauliflower, right? Just cut it up, toss it with olive oil, and put it in the oven. You can roast it on high heat for 15 minutes. You could roast it on low heat for 40 minutes. You can toss it with salt. You can toss it with lemon. You can toss it with all kinds of seeds like cumin and coriander and mustard. You could toss it with absolutely nothing except for a little bit of oil or butter, and it's going to be amazing. And I think that what people don't think about is they think they have to follow a recipe, or they think, they have to amass a lot of ingredients. One ingredient, one thing. Just do that once a week. And as you get more comfortable, then do it with a vegetable you've never done it before. Rutabaga. How many of you love rutabaga? Okay, we've got one, and then there's me. There's two rutabaga lovers. Rutabaga tastes like turnip crossed with butternut squash. It is peppery, and it is sweet, and it is so delicious. Take a rutabaga, peel it, cut it up into cubes. That will take you 4 minutes. Put it in the oven with, ever try coconut oil? Coconut oil, if you don't want to use olive oil, or you want to try something new, butter, a little bit of bacon grease that maybe you've saved from bacon that you've cooked over the weekend, salt, chili, and a touch of maple syrup or honey. It is heaven. And by doing that, you are, of course, enriching yourself, enriching your body, but because you're buying rutabaga, which guess what, a lot of people don't buy, you're also keeping rutabaga on the market for people like me who really do love it. It's important to buy things that are fresh, to cook things that are fresh, to cook things, to challenge yourself in the kitchen, even if challenging just means I'm actually going to cook something from scratch tonight. And even if that thing is, this is one of my favorite recipes, whatever fish you love, filet, steak, doesn't matter, on a roasting pan, olive oil. See, olive oil is the basis of everything. Get good olive oil, good sea salt, and then have a lemon or an orange or a little bit of vinegar for when it comes out of the oven. If you like olives, if you like spices, if you like capers, throw it on top or not. 450 in the oven, 8 to 10 minutes later, you've got dinner. I mean, that can't be that hard. So I encourage all of you, because I feel like, yes, it's good for your body. It's good for the earth. I do believe home cooking is a political act. And it's good for the soul. It's good for the heart. I really feel like when you're cooking food that you love and you're sharing it with people you love, or even if you're sitting at home and you're being just pampered by yourself, there's nothing that can do that for you like food. There really isn't. Not even a bubble bath. And I love bubble baths, but you know what? Cooking broccoli, more pampering than bubble baths. So that's what I want to say. But now what I really, really want to do is I want to talk holiday cooking with you guys, because I want to know what you're making. And I also want to be able to answer questions. Anything I can do to make it easier for you for the holidays, for cooking anything. Or, you can ask me whatever you want. I'll answer it. But really, if I can help you get into the kitchen, I want to do it. So now is your time. So ask me. But don't forget, you have to tell me one thing that you and if you're not cooking this year for the holidays, something that you love that someone has cooked for you for the holidays. So please ask me questions, and I will repeat them. Okay, thank you.
So there's an article I was just reading that said that you're more likely to get good quality here if you get a Californian olive oil.
Yeah, right? I know.
Yeah, so...
That's so true.
Do you know what? Do you have any opinions? The first I've heard of that.
Yeah, no, that is so true about California olive oils. Okay, so I went to Italy a couple of years ago to watch the olive oil harvest, which was one of the most amazing things ever. I actually did the harvest. I saw them press it, and I tasted the oil right the second it got pressed, and it was incredible. It was like the difference between anything fresh and anything canned. The difference between coconut milk from a fresh coconut, or evaporated milk and fresh milk, or it was just the freshest flavor, fresh tomatoes and canned tomatoes. It's incredible. So the closer you are to the source of your oil, the fresher it's going to be, the less time it's had in the bottle. Olive oil is volatile. It is extremely susceptible to oxidation. And when oxygen reaches olive oil, even though it's sealed up, it's still breathing, it's still able to oxidize, the flavor mellows, it gets smoother, which some people like. But if you like an assertive, grassy, which I love, really pronounced olive oil, you want to get it as close to the source as possible. Now, you guys can get local because you're here, so I would absolutely say so. In New York, I think it's still better to buy California. because it is still closer. We get the stuff that's faster on the market. Also, I think the quality has just been so impressive that it's just as good as most of the stuff you can get from Italy at a better price point, which is important. But here's the thing. Think about seasonality, okay? Olive oil has a season. Olive oil is pressed in the fall. That's when the olives ripen. It's pressed right now. Olive oil is fresh right now. Buy your olive oil in the fall, and look on the bottle for something that says new crop, preferably with the year of what the new crop is. You really don't want last year's new crop. You want 11. You want 2011 new crop. This is really important. If it's dated, you probably can trust it. And then as you know, you're going to notice that this intense olive oil you buy right now is going to get mellower, right? In March, when it's kind of tasting good, but maybe you're going to use it for cooking instead of for salads. Think about, if you want that fresh, intense taste, think about getting olive oil from South America. Not local, but at least if you can get a fresh pressing, because, obviously in South America, you're going to get fresh olive oil instead of in the fall. You're going to get it in the spring. You're going to get it in March. You're going to get it in April. And here's another really good trick that I learned from this olive oil pressing guy, the olive oil manufacturer that I visited in Tuscany. He takes his brand new fresh crop oil and he freezes it. He says, yeah, it's amazing. So you can freeze good, fresh olive oil, and it doesn't keep in the freezer for that long, but it'll keep for a couple of months. So if you buy your oil now in October, you freeze it and you pull it out in January, you're going to get that same, not the same, but a very close to it, fresh, bright green flavor. Whereas if you'd left it on the counter, it'll be mellowed a lot more. So try all of you, try it as an experiment if you have freezer space. It's a great question. And I went on and on and on. Okay, and wait, okay, I have a question for you. What are you going to make? What's your dish, or what's your favorite dish for the holidays?
So one of the things actually that we make every holiday season is chicken pulao, but it's garnished with onions fried with raisins, cranberries, and almonds.
Oh, yum.
It's very festive.
Is it creamy?
No, it's rice, but
Oh, okay. So it's a chicken pilau with, and you do the raisins and almonds, and do you toast them? Do you toast the almonds?
yeah, I toast the almonds and then fry them with onions and cranberries, and it's really festive.
And cranberries instead of raisins. I love that. Did you hear that? Okay, so chicken pilau, then he fries the almonds, and instead of raisins, dried cranberries. Brilliant. Seasonal. See? I might accidentally borrow that. No, I mean, I really might. I might get inspired to make that for my family. I love the idea of a rice pilaf dish like that. And in my head, I'm adding hazelnuts. I'm adding pine nuts. I want crunch. Aside from the almonds, I want another kind of crunch. And to me, hazelnuts seem so fall. I don't know. They just evoke fall. Thank you so much. Okay, who else?
My interest in the freezing oil and the fresh oil. My
Yeah.
wife sometimes we buy lots of meat at Costco in big packs and freeze it.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes we go to the store every time we cook and can buy a little bit of meat
Yep.
or fish. Is there a big difference in freezing your proteins versus eating it fresh?
Yeah, there is actually. Now, here's the thing about most of the meat and even most of the fish that you buy, and even whether you're buying it in a big pack or a small pack, whether it's frozen or defrosted, it's always been frozen. There is, unless you're getting it at the farmer's market, and even at the farmer's market, it's probably been frozen. Most of the stuff we get has been pre-frozen, which is fine. But the thing is, if you buy it frozen, and then you bring it home and you put it right in the freezer, you're good, because you're starting at the same place. If you buy it frozen, and then you thaw it, and then you put it back in the freezer, that means 2 freezings. Or if you buy it fresh, and you put it in the freezer, chances are it's been frozen. So I really recommend, and this is something which people don't talk about very much, if you see frozen meat, that's the meat you want to freeze. If you want to buy stuff for the freezer, buy it pre-frozen. Try not to buy fresh and then refreeze it, because unless it says it's never been frozen, it will be labeled. If it's never been frozen, you'll know it, believe me. But most of the time, the stuff we get has been frozen. So rather than buy it thawed and then refreeze it, try to buy it frozen. So it's actually a really good question that I should write an article about because it's texture more so than taste. Because what happens is when you freeze something, you are breaking down the cell walls. So the more in the freezing and it's actually the thawing. So you freeze it, you thaw it, and you open the package of something frozen and you see a lot of that juice run out. If you have actually done that twice, you've weakened those cell walls one step farther, so you're losing texture. You maybe got something a little mushy or something that's a little dry because you've lost too much of the juice. So it's not really flavor. And again, it depends on how well it was frozen. Something that was frozen really, really cold, and defrosted slowly as opposed to left out on the counter, but you defrost in your fridge, always defrost in your fridge, you have less damage, and so it's closer to fresh. So there's so many different factors, but if you have, I mean, I would say don't stress too much about it, but like, since you're asking the question, I'm going to give you the whole entire, the whole big answer here, is try to, if you buy something fresh, try to use it fresh. And if you buy something frozen, try to keep it frozen until you want to use it, and then defrost it in the fridge. Overnight usually is enough, or a couple hours. Or if you want another trick, if you're in a hurry, have you ever tried this defrosting trick where you drip the warm water on it? You guys, do you know about this trick? This is the best trick. My dad does this. Say that you have your frozen steak in the freezer and you want to make it for dinner. Leave it in the wrapping, put it in a big bowl of warm, not hot, warm water, and then let your sink drip 1 drip of warm water. And in a half an hour, just to keep the temperature, it'll regulate the temperature in the bowl, and it'll defrost in half an hour, as opposed to, so if you're in a hurry, we do that all the time. But we're buying, we try to buy frozen stuff, put it right in the freezer, and then take it out. Does that answer your question? Hey, what are you going to make? What are you going to make for Thanksgiving or Christmas, or what do you love to make? Okay, what do you love? What's a dish you love that someone's made for you? Oh, really? Okay, then you can answer it. But you don't have there's not some yummy thing that you look forward to all year long, like your mom's whatever. Pies. Pumpkin pie. Are you a pumpkin pie person? I'm going to tell you a pumpkin pie story, but first I'm going to answer this question.
I have a relationship with radicchio, a little like your relationship with fiddlehead ferns.
Oh, yeah.
And so
I
was
could
wondering
see that.
if you have any suggestions of how to prepare radicchio that might help me get past this
Yes. Okay.
dislike.
Is it the bitterness, or is it the texture, or the combination of the bitterness and the texture?
I think it's mostly the bitterness and the fact that it's sort of, I don't know, often I combine it with cheese and then it kind of stains the cheese purplish.
Yeah, it does. It really does. Okay, so I've got 2 things to tell you about radicchio. So radicchio is, if you don't like it raw, have you ever had it cooked? Have you ever had it grilled? Oh, well, if you only had it cooked, and so it's weird and bitter and kind of slimy? Yeah. Okay. I mean, I like that, but I can understand not liking that. I know I don't sound like I like it, but I do. In fact, I had it for dinner last night in Seattle. I had grilled radicchio with sliced Parmesan cheese and preserved Meyer lemon, and it was so good. But try it raw. And this is, do you eat bacon? Do you eat meat? Okay. This is the dish that's going to change your mind about radicchio. Take the radicchio, don't cut it, because if you cut it, you're going to release all that weird, don't cut it. Gently just tear it apart. And radicchio is you think you want to cut radicchio because it cuts and shreds and looks almost like slaw. It really, do a taste test. I swear this is true. It is more bitter if you use your knife. It is much sweeter if you tear it. It's one of those mysterious things. Why is that? I don't know, but I really find that I used to cut it all the time. And finally a chef said to me, who I was working with, he said, don't cut it. You have to tear radicchio. So tear it apart gently, put it in a bowl, fry some bacon, pour off, just leave enough of the bacon fat in the pan to dress your radicchio with the bacon. Add a couple of drops of red wine vinegar and a pinch of salt and some whole parsley leaves. Parsley and radicchio is heavenly. Into the bowl, and then pour the bacon fat and the bacon on top of it. And if you have cooked white beans or a can of white beans, throw that in there too. It is so good. And please email me and tell me that you did this and that you like me. And by the way, anybody can, I have a website, melissaclark.net, because somebody has .com. I don't know who they are. I hate them. But just email me through my website and please tell me that you made radicchio, because I really want to hear that. And Thanksgiving dish? Christmas dish? Oh, seriously? That's so cool. The whole thing? Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's so smart. Yeah. I love that. A fried Thanksgiving, an entire I could see doing that with also broccoli, fried broccoli, like a tempura style, or green beans, tempura green beans too. Okay, that is, you know what? You just wrote my next year's Thanksgiving feature, fried Thanksgiving. And so now you have to write to me so I can credit you. I will give you full credit. I love that. Oh, sorry. And then you're next, and then.
I have a question about spaghetti squash.
Oh yeah, spaghetti squash.
I love spaghetti squash. I have cooked it extremely successfully, and I've cooked it horribly, and I have no idea what I did wrong. And so I feel like it's a gamble now, and I don't go for it because I've cooked it like super mushy, and it won't come out.
Yeah,
Do you have
totally.
any tips and secrets?
No, you know what? I'm so with you on the spaghetti squash sometimes, and I feel like it's not about what you're cooking. I feel like it's about choosing the spaghetti squash. So you are doing fine. Because you cook it the same way, right? Yeah, right. It's all about this. So you really need to choose spaghetti squash carefully. And a couple of things about spaghetti squash. You know, sometimes they're really heavy, and sometimes they're really light. Have you ever noticed that? Like, always go for heavy. You know, with eggplants, you always want to go for light. With squashes, whatever kind of squash they are, you always want to go for heavy. And the reason for that is, with an eggplant, the heaviness is the seeds, which you don't want. With a squash, the heaviness is the water content and the moisture content of the flesh, which you do want. Because if it's very dry, it is much easier for it to fall apart. You know, it just goes bleh, which is what happens, right? Yeah, and you want those long strands. Yeah, so look for smaller ones. For the most part, I think smaller ones, I mean, I don't know, have you noticed that? This is anecdotal. I think small for that kind of thing is better. But go with heavy. Like, if it should just feel heavy for its size, not light. So, and again, let me know how it works out. And so what do you do with spaghetti squash then?
Oh, just like pasta, sort of like lots of different veggies.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, that's so funny. I was just talking about that yesterday. Yes, so what I love to do with spaghetti squash, and you can do this with any pumpkin, any kind of squash. With spaghetti squash, you don't have to, it comes out like strands, but you can take, say, a butternut squash, peel it, put it in the food processor with the grating disc and get these long strands, and then saute it in brown butter with sage. It is so good and so easy, and it's actually not a recipe in this book, but I'll do it for the next book. But it's something I make a lot. I love to use the grating disc on the food processor because it's really fast, and also it breaks things down in a texturally interesting way that you don't do that a lot except for grated cheese or coleslaw. But if you take carrots and do that, and then you add them to, say you want to make macaroni and cheese, and say you have a 3-year-old and you really want her to eat your vegetables. So you take your carrots, you grate them in the food processor, you throw them into your pan of boiling noodles at the last minute of cooking, and they just do 1 minute, drain it, and then you toss it with your cheddar cheese, and I use eggs and sour cream for my mac and cheese. I don't like making a bechamel. It's one more step that I don't want to have to do, and I love the richness of the sour cream. Pop it in the oven, and it is the best mac and cheese. And you got carrots in there, which look like cheddar cheese, so it's aesthetically very pleasing, and it has an underlying sweetness, which I think is really good. And you can do the same thing with butternut squash. I've done it. Butternut squash, peel it, just grate it in the food processor, in with your macaroni, and that recipe is in this book. So, and online in many places if you want to find it. What else? Oh, you were going to ask a question. Oh. Okay, that sounds great. Okay, I'm going to repeat that for you guys. Okay, so you take broccoli. Oh, is that a 5-minute warning, Cliff? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Because I actually have no idea what time it is, so you have to definitely give me a 5-minute. Okay. Okay, that is brilliant because the chickpea flour is so savory, right? So what she was saying is to take broccoli florets to make fried broccoli, to do chickpea flour. What do you moisten it with? Water or what? Water. Or milk, and then you use onions. You use onion seeds. What kind? And anise seeds. Oh, yum! Right in the batter, and then you dip it in. Make sure to put enough salt in that batter too, right? And chili, yum! Which I definitely am. And then deep fry that. So that sounds great. Actually, I'm going to try that. It sounds wonderful. Cauliflower too, right? Cauliflower. Okay, what else can I okay, since you said that, now I'm going to ask you. Okay, well, I guess that's a dish. That's fair. But are you doing anything fun for the holidays? Any great? Nice, like a full traditional. What? For biryani, I would probably make your own clarified butter rather than buying it, just because I think if you're using, I think the quality, if you can get really amazing butter, it's all about the butter, right? Right. So I would say get super amazing local butter or French butter, with a high fat content, something, and then make your own and clarify yourself. I think that will be. Oh God, I mean cardamom, right? I mean traditional cardamom, cinnamon. You can't get the spicing on a traditional biryani is so delicious that I wouldn't mess with it. The only thing I would say is just check the butter quality of course, the rice is really, you gotta get the best rice that you can possibly get. I don't even know what that would mean here. Like I know the brands I get, but just get the best possible, amazing, fragrant, the kind of rice that's, $6 a pound. You're like, why am I paying $6 a pound for rice? But stuff like that, if you think about it, it's actually not that expensive, and it makes such a big difference in a dish that's rice-based. So false economy on our part to think, rice is usually 99 cents a pound. I shouldn't spend $6, but for something that's that important, I always say, go for it, because it's not going to break the bank, and it's going to make a huge difference. What else you look like you're about to say something.
So if you were downsizing your kitchen, what do you think the top tools to keep are?
Oh, good question. Okay, if you're downsizing your kitchen, what are the top tools to keep? Are you downsizing your kitchen?
Yes, I'm going from a 1,100 square foot to a 600 square foot.
Oh,
place.
man.
So I need to downsize everything, but I don't want to get rid of all of my kitchen toys. So I want to know what I should definitely keep.
Okay, so I always say that the most important thing is the quality of the stuff you have. So if you have anything cheap, anything that's not so good, so the first thing to get rid of is all the stuff that's just not top quality, because that stuff's going to break on you anyway. So you might as well, sell in a yard sale right now. What you really need, the basics of a kitchen, I think, are you need your knives. So, and they don't take up a lot of space. So I would say keep your knives, right? You need you need your pasta pot, you need your skillet. If you have a choice between keeping, say you have 2 skillets, this is actually really good advice. Always keep the one with the straight sides rather than the slope sides, because I find that you can braise in a straight-sided skillet. It's called a saute pan. You can braise in that, and you can still saute in it. I mean, the reason for the slope sides on those skillets is so chefs can go like that, because the food goes up around. Now, chances are you're not doing that. Are you doing that? Right. So, who does that? Unless you're a chef. So you can get rid of, if you have 2 skillets the same size, and one has straight sides and one has slopey sides, and you don't have room for both, get rid of the one with the slopey sides. Because the other one is more versatile, especially if it has a cover. You can braise fish in it, you can braise chicken in it. This stuff I think it's an all-clad 11-inch straight-sided saute pan with a cover, and I use it every day for everything. I'll fry 1 egg in it. I'll do an entire chicken cut up in it. So that is key. Graters are good. Microplane graters. If you have a few, do you have any of those? Yeah. Get rid of the turny one. Get rid of the turny one and just use the long one, because the turny one, I think I don't know that it's adding. You can probably do everything you need on the long one, right? And then a vegetable peeler. Another thing, if you want to make big curls of cheese, and you have I like the coarse microplanes, with the big holes, but you can use a vegetable peeler and get the same result. So get rid of that, if you have one of those. What are some other essential things? You really wooden cutting boards versus plastic. Always go for wood, get rid of the plastic. It's one of those things, and it's there's this big debate on it, but it seems, and I've really researched this because I once went on the radio and I was talking about it, so I had to, and it really seems like the plastic holds bacteria too. And the wood actually has antibacterial if it's a good type of wood, which cutting boards are made of. It has antibacterial properties, and no matter what kind of cutting board you have, you need to wash it really well in hot soapy water. That said. Everybody's so afraid of chicken. Are you guys afraid of chicken? That they're going to have raw chicken. My mother is terrified of raw chicken. There are so many people out there raw chicken juice. It's going to get all over everything. Don't be afraid of it. And just use a vinegar spray on your cutting board when you're done. A vinegar spray is just take some white vinegar, put it in a bottle, add I think it's 1 part vinegar to 8 parts water or something like that, and just use it as a spray. It will kill anything. It's not toxic. It's safe for your small children and pets to be around. And so anything that the wood won't do, just vinegar spray it and you're fine. So I really, you can look it up, but this is really the latest. It seems like the plastic ones. And also the thing about the plastic ones are they're harder on your knives. For the most part, most of them, not all of them. Some plastic ones are fine on your knives, but wood is usually softer on your knives, so you don't have to sharpen your knives as much. If you have a knife sharpener, one of those thing. Yeah, definitely keep that and use it every time you use your knife or every other time you use your knife. If you guys aren't doing the thing, learn how to do it. It is, I wish I could show you right now, it is the best thing to keep your knife sharp. So that's another thing you must have. What else? Your food processor, you have to keep that, right? But if it's a choice between the food processor or the KitchenAid, the mixer, I would say the food processor is probably more versatile. If you have both and you can keep both, great. But out of the two, I would go for the food processor. And you don't need a toaster. You really don't. Broil it. 1 minute under the broiler on a baking sheet. I didn't have a toaster for years. I mean, years. We got a toaster when I got married. So that was 5 years ago. So before that, it was perfectly high. And I didn't even want it. My husband really wanted the toaster. I'm like, really? A toaster? But, I mean, it's fine, but you don't. And you definitely don't need a toaster oven. Definitely, right? No. Better to have, yeah. Don't need a pressure cooker. Don't need a blender if you have a food processor or an immersion blender, much smaller, and you don't have the thing. Is this helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any?
Because we keep having the argument of whether to get rid of the mixer or we have like the old school hand mixer or the immersion blender.
Get rid of the mixer, keep the immersion blender. Yeah. You can, do you have the immersion blender with the whip attachment? Because you can do egg whites right in the immersion blender.
No, but I was thinking like cookies.
Yeah, you can use that you can use that same one for cookies. No, you don't have a food processor?
No, I don't have like some attachment for immersion blender.
Oh, for immersion blender, you can probably buy this. There's a little thing, you know how it has a little blade? There's something that clips on and it's for egg whites. Yeah, so you can beat egg whites with your immersion blender. But for your food processor, you can make the cookies in the food processor. So I would say, you really have to get rid of both? Oh, that's a drag. I feel for you. But I would keep the immersion blender for sure, because you can just do so much more with it. Because you can't make smoothies with right? Try to make smoothies with one of those things, you're going to be sad. All right, okay, one more question. Oh, wait, tell me quick. What are you making for the holidays?
Oh, my favorite eggnog French toast for Christmas.
Oh, yay! Yes, brilliant. Leftover eggnog right over on the brilliant eggnog French.
Soak it overnight.
Perfect.
French bread and soak it overnight.
Yum. Okay, that sounds heavenly. Eggnog French toast for Christmas morning. Yummy. Okay, one more question and then. Hi.
I was wondering if you could give me any tips about fresh artichokes.
Yes,
I love
can.
making. Okay, because I love making like spinach artichoke dip, but when I try to make it from fresh artichokes, they turn out pretty bad.
Okay, I want anybody who wants to make artichokes. I did an epic video for the New York Times, me and 9 minutes of artichoke cleaning. Now, it is probably I shouldn't say this on camera because we're getting taped, so I'm not going to say. I'm going to be very diplomatic. Let's just say it could be shorter. So it's a little bit long, but you will learn every single thing there is to know about how to handle an artichoke. You will learn cleaning, you will learn how deep to go, you'll learn how to cook it properly. So the key to what you're saying is you got to cook it really soft and you have to trim it really far down. So those are the things, I know that a lot of people are hesitant when cleaning an artichoke because when you clean an artichoke, you lose 70% of it. And you think this is such a waste, but you have to lose 70% of it. So I'll show you in the video exactly how to do it. If you just go to the New York Times homepage and put in Melissa, just do a search or just do a Google search, obviously, for Melissa Clark artichokes and video, it'll come up, and it's a really good video. So many people have said to me, I was so afraid of artichokes till I saw the video, and it's changed my relationship to artichokes. So it's a good one. It's very informative. Should be 4 minutes, but it's 9. Anyway, what are you gonna make for the holidays? And then we're gonna.
It's not really a dish that I make, but the one thing that I bring to the family dinner is that I make wild mushroom gravy instead of just simple gravy. So we have the family split on that. Some can't stand mushrooms, but the ones who do like mushrooms are all over it.
Do you use fresh or dried wild mushrooms?
Fresh.
Fresh wild mushroom gravy sounds amazing. I actually never done that, so that might be on our table this year. All right, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you coming out. And like I said, email me any other questions at my website. I'd be happy to hear from you.